Folks, I've hit the recorder and it seems to be working, so we will go ahead and call the meeting, the Public Safety Committee for the month of February to order. It's 12:05 p.m. and my name is Paul Holman. I'm on the Anchorage Assembly and currently chair this committee, Public Safety Committee. And so I'll start and have the other members of the Assembly introduce themselves to the committee.
Bernie Hall, Anchorage Assembly.
Dick Training, Anchorage Assembly.
Thank you. And for the record, we will do a sign-in sheet. We'll pass around. My legislative aide, Christy Cater Brown, will send unfortunately, a sheet of paper. We forgot the actual official sign-in sheet, but this should suffice. So if you'd sign in with a name of who you're representing and a contact, either number or an email, that'd be great. And for the department heads, we have traditionally Health and Human Services, Police Department, Fire Department, and the Office of Emergency Management. So looks like the directors are here and ready. So we'll just start real quick, like Health and Human Services, Ms. Wickmeyer, since I know you're at the front of the table. If you'd like us to defer and have you come back to you, I know you just see.
I don't have anything pressing, so I'm fine with deferring.
Okay. I know I read with interest that someone has reported that the major worst part of the flu season is past us. Do we have any outbreaks that you know of?
Flu season may be past us, but a concern is pertussis in adults because a lot of adults do not have a pertussis shot, and so that's becoming a concern that Washington has raised that we'll be looking into more.
Okay. Very good. Chief, you do anything? I know that we're interested in recruitment, and of course the academy. We saw that the announcements on the street. Anything?
We have a school coming up for backgrounds investigators. We are in the selection process to create, we're going to probably send a couple sergeants and I probably have the numbers wrong, but let's say a dozen officers to that. And then we're going to select a crew out of that group and stand up a backgrounds unit. We're already doing recruiting efforts. We've been to a number of weekend events. We've got a whole bunch more scheduled. So we're definitely ramping up. We're going to take the first round, I think, about April. I'm going to say it's late April, early March. We're going to chop off the applications, call that Group 1, and then put them into that. In other words, shift those from recruiting into testing and backgrounds and all that, and then continue the recruiting, and then create Group 2, and we're going to process them in batches in that fashion. So I think the applications are going to be taken through May. And we're looking for an academy at the tail end of October, 1st of November, right in that time frame.
And I know I'll help you out here because I'm also invested. The Citizen Police Academy started last week, so thank you for being there. But I think we're the largest class we've had, 40, 41, 42, something like that. I don't recall, maybe you did when the introductions, how many of those folks may be interested in applying for positions today? Were there some that didn't identify themselves?
I think there were 2 that admitted it, and then 2 more that didn't want to show their hand, but later said they're putting in applications too. So I think around 4.
Not that Citizen Academy will guarantee anybody any step up, or it's not the end of the day that they're not police officers. It just helps them to become better educated in the community. So thanks, Chief, for the support of that ongoing program. This is the 18th class, by the way. So we have with the Office of Emergency Management.
Right, Ron Fitch with the Office of Emergency Management. The only thing really going on with us, we just took possession of 2 of our emergency shelter supply trailers. Have arrived and we stockpiled them with shelter supplies. We had Shelter X just recently, what was it, last weekend or weekend before. That worked out really well. Worked with health services on that. And that's about what we got going on.
Brown bag lunches continue?
The brown bags continue. Throughout the year we have, I think, 12 more scheduled. I don't have the dates in front of me. And of course, our next major event will be the fire department open house. We'll be having a group of people there for that.
And I thought I heard with interest that you had a short staff. Are you saying you're losing a person?
Yeah, we're actually, Dawn Brantley, who's our public outreach person. She'll be going on to bigger and better things. She's moving on to Virginia Beach. She's got a job there, so we'll be losing her at the end of the month. So.
She used to fill in a very, very engaged person at OEM. So.
Yep, she did a great job.
Very good. Chief Lachute?
We're also in the process of opening up recruitment, and we'll be, the actual date of the academy is not set. It's still flexible. Hopefully, as we get closer to the end of the year, we'll have a more accurate picture of how many people we're going to need, and we should have people in the pipeline ready to go.
Still, my fault. I know that I'm interested in discussing arson investigations, and of course, the fire marshal position. He's been acting, I understand, vice fire marshal for 5 or 6 years or better. I don't remember the date, but.
Yes, long time.
The biggest concern is arsons were on the rise, UCR, I know you were aware of that, and we're down to 1 guy and there was 3, and so we're just curious that we need to know what that number looks like. And also we're coming up with first quarter budget revisions and the tender that was supposed to be managed by maintenance, staffing, whatnot.
Right.
Do you know where we're at with that? Are we looking okay for the end of the year, through the end of the year, or?
As you know, we weren't really given sufficient funding to keep Tender 9, which is in the south side of Anchorage, open. Tender is essentially a big water truck. And so I'm given a choice. How do I manage that apparatus with insufficient funds? And I thought it would be commonsensical to, rather than wait until later in the year and suddenly realize we don't have enough money, to just put that rig essentially out of service whenever it would incur overtime. And so that's what we've done. I've since been told, no, we'll keep it in service, wait until it gets to the end of the year, and if we need to take it out of service at that time, we will. The trouble is, when you're dealing, as you know, with just the vagaries of human nature and having 97 people on duty, it is pretty difficult to predict 12 months out how things are going to look budget-wise. It is quite possible I could get to the end of the year, have Tender 9 open 100% of the time, and not have any issues with my budget. The opposite is possible also, and it's really tough to predict at this time. So, long answer to a short question, but it is going to depend. There's still a very distinct possibility that Tender 9 will be out of service from time to time, probably later in the year.
Not to put you on the spot, but I would like to. I'd be
Oh,
interested
I
in-
like the spot.
Okay, we'd like to have a number, if possible, before, in advance of building for first quarter budget revisions, that might give us some surety, because as you know, there's been a practice, we're not spending what we're budgeting and allocating, and we come in under budget, we put it in a fund balance and we allocate it differently. So
Okay.
we have a fund balance, I'm sure, that we'll know about soon when the CAFR comes in, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to adjust that and place the funding, but we need to know a number, so that would be.
And a number to maintain Tender 9 100% of the
Operation
time.
100%.
Will do.
And that, again, minus some things there, so you may have some other questions of all the department heads.
Just a quick one. Chief Bouchou, if you've covered this at any time prior to this, my apology. What's the status on the EMT units you got that were substandard? Had that been,
Knock on wood, they are in service, they are on the street, and they seem to be doing just fine.
they do a good job?
Yes. Now, my gut tells me they are not going to have the longevity that our other rigs have, but they're doing all right. They're on the road, and the crews are happy with them, and so far they are performing well.
Thank you.
So the vendor did come through as
He
promised.
did.
They
He
came
did
in.
absolutely come through, and again, I have to thank our purchasing department because they definitely carried the water on it, and they definitely got with the vendor and straightened him out, I would say, and he held up his part of the bargain.
Any other questions of the members to the, anything we missed covered?
No, I think he would
Mr.
hit
Jackson's
with.
coming back just about the time we're rolling. I'm sorry, you may have missed some of the comments.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Do you have any questions that we've asked about recruitment and academies, and we just talked about, I know I asked specifically to get a number, what may be needed to keep Tender 9 in operation through the rest of the year in advance of first quarter budget revisions and things like that. Is there anything that you?
No, and I apologize, I had to leave for a second.
Okay, so we're then on to new business, and I asked that at least some of you may need to be here for some particular questions of administration. I'm not sure where emergency management might fit in, so Mr. Fitch, if you've got a few moments, you're welcome to stay, otherwise I understand you have to leave.
Got nowhere else to go.
New business, In-N-Out Bush Liquor 2. There's been a conditional protest of the liquor license renewal, and this was requested by Assemblymember Hall and Frasca, is that district, area district. And so I believe we had someone here from Spinard Community Council who identified. Are there anybody here for representing In-N-Out Bush Liquor 2? Anybody that's a business licensee owner? No. Okay, so It was at the last meeting, and we postponed it. We put up conditional protest because we had heard some concerns, I believe, Mr. Hall, you might be able to better explain.
Yeah, there's been some issues in that particular area, businesses that have had some pretty bad experiences, and they're here this evening or today to give us their personal issues that are being dealt with, so.
How many people are here regarding In-N-Out Bush Liquor too? Can you just raise your hand a minute? Okay, so it looks like a small number.
It is.
If we could, I'm sorry, we may or may not have a seat available. There's a seat. If somebody who wants to take first crack, just come up so we can pick you up on the microphone. And within a reasonable period of time, if you can just explain your concerns so we can understand, you may have questions or may not.
My name is Renee Haig. I'm the owner of Blaine's Art Supply.
Okay.
And my issues are that I have a huge group of inebriates that I'm directly across from the In-N-Out Liquor, across Benson. And there's anywhere from 5 to 20 inebriates that hang out just on the edge of my property every single day of the week. They panhandle with my customers. They defecate, urinate, throw up all over my property. We're constantly having to clean that up. I think it poses a major health hazard for my customers, myself, and my employees. They intimidate my employees. They're constantly walking back and forth across the street, of course. You know, it doesn't make any difference if there's vehicles coming or not. People are slamming on the brakes, practically hitting them. I hear these comments every day. We've had other business members in the community try to talk to the owners of In-N-Out and explain to them that this is a serious problem for everyone in that part of Spenard, and they just don't seem to want to change anything. So,
I know I have a question, but does anybody from the body have questions?
How many violations do you have, ABC violations, and what was the answer to dealing with those ABC violations?
I don't recall seeing ABC violations at this establishment in the last 2 years. And I had asked AP Cap Team, and I believe Natasha Welch was looking it up. Christy, do you know if we had an email from Natasha Welch from the Cap Team, AP Officer Welch? Okay, she was supposed to send something, she texted me last night.
I can check right now, but I haven't seen that.
Yeah, if you would, please, and we might be able to come back to you on that answer.
Have they violated their conditional use process, all the conditions put on their license?
To my knowledge, that was the questions that I have for the business owner, particularly Ms. Haig. Have you contacted the police? I heard you say earlier you contacted.
many times.
So
Yeah.
there should be reports then, Chief, that are associated to this business?
If people have been calling the police, that should generate either police reports or police incident numbers, that we should be able to track what those calls were, who put them in, when, what time of day, what day of week, that sort of thing, nature of call.
And I did contact Lieutenant Gilman. I'm not sure if we followed through to make sure it was through your office officially, but he and I were having a conversation a couple of days ago, and then Officer Welch did contact me and say she was looking at it.
Are they getting you what you need? Or we
I
just
think so.
haven't got it yet, or-
I'm just trying to verify that we got them in. She texted me as late as last night saying she was going to be sending an email, I think, with the response. And we'll see if we can find that for just a moment, and we'll circle back on that. But and you have contacted the business owner as well?
Yeah, I've spoken with many business owners in the area. The mountaineering shop down Spenard Road has issues with inebriates. The printer, which is down Fireweed and Spenard. The North Rim Bank has issues. That little cigar shop behind the Buckaroo Club. Spoken with them, they have issues as well. I mean, we have people camping there all summer long. They sleep there, they just use it like a camp, so, that area.
My pointed question specifically then is, knowing that there's an inebriate problem, substance abuse, panhandling, citywide, and heavily will
Sure.
admit that that there's a congregation mostly in Midtown around the intersections. I've seen them in Denali, I've seen them near the Sears Mall lot in the corner, I've seen them Fred Meyer lot on the other side, clearly down in your local area. Can we attribute these people as either customers or frequent customers in and around that business, other than just the fact that it's coincidental that everything's going on around there?
I don't think it's coincidental, because they stand directly across from that business all day long. It's like a 9-hour shift. They stand there all day, staring at across the street, and their friends are coming back and forth. I don't see them carrying liquor, but I see them drinking it. And, you know, it's the same cheap stuff that establishments like this are in business to sell. I mean, if you like to have a beer or a glass of wine, I'll tell you what, you would never find anything in that place that you would probably be able to handle, because it's just disgusting. I mean, they carry the cheapest, they carry products for alcoholics, basically.
So is it then your request that they not be allowed to sell the cheap alcohol? Are there some suggestions that you would have?
Well, I just wish they weren't there at all, because it is a complete attraction. I don't see them across the street from Brown Jug. I think Brown Jug, they won't serve them. But obviously they're serving these people because they're right across the street. If that liquor store wasn't there, I don't think we'd have this. I don't think we'd have this congregation of people.
Okay.
Well, just a comment, Renee, and actually I'm sitting here chagrined because I haven't done this. I don't know that there are any conditions on their conditional use permit, but I will very shortly know about that. We will get the reports that we're looking for here, so that by the time this comes before us to deal with, we will have the background, and we will have if there are conditional uses that have been violated in regards to their conditional use permit.
Mr. Trent?
You know, we've put conditional use on a lot of other package stores before. We've got to find out what's been done in the past, because we're not the final decision on this. If we don't follow correct procedures, ABC board will overrule us, and they'll see you're being arbitrary and capricious, which is their favorite terminology for us taking action on the liquor store. I want to find out what conditional use restraints are on them now. Now we can improve that for the neighborhood.
It looks like we did get an email from her. We have 34 calls of service to In-N-Out Liquor for the year 2012.
34?
34.
Okay.
We need to get with Matt and find out.
Somebody said,
And then
they
the
crossed
ABC
out.
board and find out.
When the packet for renewal came in and we pulled it, I did not see any actual ABC
Well,
violations.
let's have the clerk's office check, and then if there are violations, get hold of the ABC board and tell us the results of that. Because I want to see if the ABC board's talking to this company.
Right. And-
Can I-
and- Go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I just clarify?
Yes.
It looks like 11 of those were actually traffic stops in that vicinity, so that would be potentially related.
Minus
but-
11, so 23.
Which one?
Okay, so here's the issue with the calls for service. If you call from your business, and being any of the businesses around there, and they give their address, then the call would go to their address. The problem may be the business across the street, or it may be the vagrant or the inebriate that's panhandling at the corner of a block or two down. So just simply looking at the calls for service isn't gonna be enough. We're gonna need to see if we can pull any actionable police reports. And then oftentimes if, by the time the officers, as they go in priorities, they get there and the problem is what they call G or gone, it's logged rather than a report made, so we may not have enough information based on that.
Right.
We'll do our best to pull that information so we can have that to review amongst the body, and of course, Mr. Hall and myself will be very interested in that. Randy's given us some good indications. As I talked to the ABC board as of 2 days ago, I asked specifically about these locations. And anecdotally, it was a quick answer, so I don't recall him giving a better, deeper review. But he said basically that he didn't have any open concerns at this time. That's the answer I got from him.
Sure.
So ABC. Yes, yes. So we have others from the In-N-Out Liquor concern.
Hello, my name is Margaret Oth. I've been on the Spinard Community Council for over 20 years. Right now, I'm on the executive committee. The chair is out of town at this point and had sent an email to the assembly members, and I hope you all received that regarding, oh, I'm sorry, that's the next thing I'm talking about. But I am kind of speaking for him too. We have a member of our council, Tom McGrath, who has a business on Spinard Road. Unfortunately, he's not here today, but he has been making calls about In-N-Out Liquor for probably 20 years. And this has come before our council many times. And we have appealed to the assembly, to the ABC board, please do something about this business. I think it would, I'm not sure if Renee has pictures from, but I know I frequent Blaine's and I see them. And yes, they are crossing the street and going directly to her property. They are belligerent and difficult. I've seen them fighting in her parking lot. I feel bad for her because she's trying to run a business and she's got vagrants that are trespassing, and she's relying on the police to come and take care of it. And as Mr. Horniman has said, sometimes it just depends on what their calls are. So she has to put up with it in the meantime, and all of her patrons, her employees. And it's not just this one on Benson, the one on Arctic and 36 has the same problems with the same kind of liquors that they sell, the same kinds of fortified wines. A man died within a couple of blocks from there last fall. Most likely he had purchased his alcohol at that establishment on Arctic. I just wonder how much the community has to abide by before this problem is going to be resolved. The owners of In-N-Out have never ever approached the community council with ideas of how they can work better with us to take care of this situation. They haven't changed their inventory to make it less inebriate friendly and affordable. This is a community problem. It's a safety issue that the community depends on the assembly and the alcohol board to resolve. And this is long-term and ongoing. And there's so much frustration in our community councils when we talk about this, because it's like shouting at a wall.
Is the community council, have they passed a resolution about this issue?
Several resolutions that we most recently did a couple of months ago, but
Do you have a copy of that? Or do you have a copy?
it was sent to the assembly. Chairman Hall has it. But we've done several resolutions over the years as their liquor license has come up for renewal. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Trent?
What's been the response of the ABC board? You said you've talked to them and Elaine showed up to their meetings. What did they tell you?
I haven't personally attended their meetings. I've sent in written comments.
Did they ever respond to you?
No.
And the head of the organization, business, has never come to your community council to explain what they're doing and why?
No. And the community council is known for working with businesses.
I know you are.
We just had a couple of new alcohol establishments set up. Milano's got a beer and wine store next door, and then La Bodega. We're not hostile to businesses, but we don't like poor business management, especially when it's affecting the community so much.
Any questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank folks for coming out this afternoon and pleading to the assembly to help make the situation better. And I'm definitely supportive of working with my colleagues to do just that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have at least one other person, I think. Like to testify.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason Bergerson. I'm the vice chair of the Spenard Community Council and a former president of the Spenard Council. In my 15-plus years of dealing with the council, I've also heard several complaints about both in and out locations. To follow on to what Peggy mentioned, at La Bodega in Milano's, we supported their liquor license proposals with conditions. Specifically, you've probably seen the conditions when we sent them in, but what we asked is that these new establishments don't sell shooters, the 2-ounce liquor at $1 or $2 a piece, that 40-ounce beers and the extreme sales on cases, 12-packs, 36-packs of beer, focusing on less than 75 cents or $1 a can, not be offered. Both Milano's and La Bodega were more than happy to attach those as conditions to their licenses. It's not a business segment they wanted to cater to and wanted to work with us as a community. So I'll leave it at that, and if you've got questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you for coming out. Is
Thanks.
there anyone that didn't get a chance to speak on this issue?
2 cents worth.
Thanks, sir.
They're not $2 anymore, they're $3. I was just informed.
Okay.
The shooters that they're selling.
The 3,
Yeah.
the little small bottles, individuals.
Thank you.
But I've been an officer and a member of the council now for about 40 years.
Can we get your name this week?
Alan Thornhill.
Okay, thanks, sir.
And I basically live across the street from Bernard Rec Center. And we've had numerous complaints. We've had numerous write-ins and complaints to the ABC board and so forth and so on. And me as the treasurer, what do we have to do to convince anybody of what's going on? Do we need to set up a camera? What would convince you to take action? Because we've done everything else.
Well, I can only answer for myself, but I will say that the Assembly has been known to place conditions or restrictions at locations. We have guidelines that we have to follow within, or else we basically become part of the problem as well. Certainly, what you're doing today, it leads that direction, this body to that, those sort of steps in that direction. We have protested licenses and renewals. Most recently, you've probably seen and heard to a full bar, where I'm sure there's high dollar stake at that as well. There's a lot more patrons going in and out. Problems. So we're not bashful or not ashamed to do it. Part of our conundrum, part of our problems, as I asked earlier, is, and I'm sure the chief could probably add to this, so much of the societal problems of alcohol and inebriates publicly outside and outdoors. Decades ago, we had a law in this town where it was against the law to be publicly inebriated, to be out in public and inebriated.
Correct.
In a roadway intoxicated. Those have been, by court rulings, those have been downgraded to, at best, at least the crossing or intoxicated on the roadway is an infraction, meaning a citation, a ticket, not a jailable offense. And it's kept court law case rulings. So we're at limits of what we can do, but we can take steps, and then we can certainly add restrictions on, and then if the corrections aren't made, then we can certainly go in and protest along with the community. So the first steps that we're doing here is we pull the alcohol permit renewal for this purpose, to hear the concerns and decide if there's needs to be conditions or a continued protest of the license.
I'd like to ask a question. I wonder if you folks that know the area can tell me whether you perceive the situation has gotten worse since summer of 2011.
Yeah. Well, I'll put it this way. Since Renee has moved into her new building, because I go over by there or to there quite a bit, but I also go, and we have, as the council, we've had complaints, I'd say, the last 10, 15 years of people trying to use the bus stop, which is right there at the place.
I'm wondering if you noticed a particular spike since maybe the fall of 2011. I don't know if you can answer that or not. I'm curious, because we made a shift, and I'm wondering if that affected things.
It hasn't been reduced at all. I mean, there's more people there than there have been in past years. When I had the location on the corner of Spenard and River Heights, We used to have a few people hang out there, probably 5 or 6, and they were all polite about it, they'd leave. But when we asked them to, these guys are not that way. They're very arrogant. There's usually 15 to 20 of them, and every time we call the cops to come by, they'll scatter, and then the ones that can't walk because they have drunk too much, they, are sitting there and they can't do anything apparently. As I understand, they get a citation.
Well,
But
the cops will hopefully try and find some way to deal with them, but if they're just really, really drunk and they're just sitting on a park bench, that in itself is not a crime, unfortunately, maybe. But, well, the reason I asked is because, we worked the homeless camps really hard that summer. And then last summer, we had moved CAP off of that project largely because we actually beat that down a fair amount. There really weren't that many homeless camps reported in summer 2012. There were some, don't get me wrong, but not nearly what we'd seen before. And CAP's most focus last summer was frankly downtown bars and Inlet Inn and Town Square and that area. We shifted they go where the squeaky wheel is squeaking loudest. And so I wondered if after they but refocused off homeless camps, if maybe you saw a comeback in that area. But it sounds like it's been a problem all through.
No, they live in the area.
Thank you, Mr. Thornhill, I appreciate it. Any other questions?
Just one comment. If you're going to go to a community council meeting, Alan does the refreshments at Spinard. They are superior.
Well, he's the treasurer, right, so he has the ability to, okay, very good.
Yeah, right here.
Chief, just one quick comment on this particular location, and we'll do some delving in, if you don't mind, with the types of calls that are coming in. And we'll also check with the People Mover, and perhaps if they're seeing problems with people hanging around or milling around there, perhaps they can look at relocating that bench, different location.
I think this sounds like a public health problem. I think Shannon needs to take it serious and get out of it.
I'm listening.
And that's another question, in
Figure out-
seriousness.
She's taking meticulous.
Ms. Meyer, do you know if the ASP, are you responsible still for the ASP grant, the safety patrol?
Yes.
Are they running to Midtown? At one point, they had limits of where they were picking up. Do you know if they're making regular look-sees at that geographic area?
Well, we report when there's somebody who, whether APD or AFD or a citizen reports somebody as appearing to be in an unsafe condition, so if we have somebody in a position where they could walk out onto the street and get hurt, and that's called qualifying for Title 47, then, yes, we would come with the van and pick them up, and we are in operation 24 hours a day. Again, that's a temporary solution, because once they're no longer qualified with their behavior under Title 47, being unsafe for themselves or for somebody else, then we can't hold them there. So then they're released, and most likely they're gonna go back to the same location.
So, Chris, if you'd make a note, we need to check with the fire department about medic runs there for emergency calls as well.
We just hired a crime analyst.
Yes.
Came to work a week ago. So, as you know, we've been taxed this last year trying to produce the numbers you guys, a lot of people want in a timely way. I think we'll be catching up soon now.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, the next issue is Minnesota Billiards, and I know I see a representative from Minnesota Billiards. And just so you folks know, Mr. Trainey, if you want to explain it better than I can, you can. Otherwise, we'll be researching more information, more data. In the meantime, this license remains under conditional protest to the ABC board. We will get the data that we need to substantiate what we believe to be a reasonable, not arbitrary, non-capricious way to consider placing restrictions. One of the things that I'll note for the record is that my legislative aide physically delivered an invite to this meeting to answer to the concerns of the community. And it sounds like that may be a large part of the problem, that the owner is not engaged in listening to the concerns from the community council and the problems. I'm not going to go on a limb, I'm not going to go out there and say that they're responsible for any street inebriate that happens to pass by their business. I won't say that. But clearly, if they're inviting a location problem, and I know the chief really knows this as from the community policing perspective, if it's the problem is the geographic location of the business and they're not taking proper steps, then we can certainly require certain things of them. and we will look into that, and we'll be moving on that as quickly as
What we want to do is look at their last conditional use, because we want to see if they violate the conditional use. That gives us ground to protest their license. And we can put more restrictions on it. For example, we can ban fortified liquors. We've done that numerous times. To the point we grind them into the ground, or we get compliance with their behavior. And we're willing to do that.
Yeah, so thank you. And I know Squinard may have community council, some members may be here from Minnesota Billiards, so you're welcome to stay otherwise.
Same community council.
Yes, that's true. Yes, sir, Minnesota Billiards.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Fred Odson. My last name is O-D-S-E-N. I am an attorney at law and a member of the Hughes Gorski Law Firm. Many of you will remember the law firm in its traditional name, Hughes Thorsness. We've been around for about 74 years in Anchorage. We represent Minnesota Billiards. Its principal is Mr. Jindo So. Mr. So is here along with his wife. Miss So is not here this afternoon. His daughter Ji So, the general manager of Minnesota Billiards, is here. There's Ji. The operations manager is also here, Daryl Centeno. Now, I've recently undertaken the representation of Minnesota Billiards. We did have a very forthright discussion at the latest Spenard Community Council meeting, which I think was last week. And we are in the process of discussing possible terms and conditions for a conditional use permit and trying to see if we can come to understanding and analysis that is acceptable. And in that regard, I wanted to point out, it was touched on earlier, that the chairman of Spenard Community Council, Mr. Jim Bowers, is out of town. He's in New Mexico. He advised me of that. He did send a request via email to the assembly members present that perhaps this matter be put over until we have he and I and our clients have an opportunity to further discuss possible conditions and issues. And he is back, and so we certainly honor and respect that request and have no objection to it, and I want that clearly understood. I'll give a little bit of an overview of what's going on. Minnesota Billiards has been in business, I think, about 17 years, 14 years, I'm sorry, at its location right next door to the Peter's Sushi Spot, 3020 Minnesota Drive, Suite 3. In the last couple of years, Jiso and Daryl have been in charge of the management of the enterprise, and we've had visits from Chairman Hall, from Mr. Honeman, to the premises where they noted, I think, that the security there is very substantially beefed up. There's an extensive security system with cameras, with recordation of all activities inside and outside the property. In addition, the property or the system now is that it's a pay-as-you-play type of a pricing deal. To get in the door and get through a locked gate, you have to pay $7.50. Nobody gets in who's not a customer, and very strict rules apply in terms of behavior and otherwise. What Minnesota Billiards is seeking, and they have on file applications for ABC Board recreational site license, a recreational site license, which is a beer and wine license. At the location, their intention is to sell only bottled beer to customers only. In addition, it is their anticipation that we would negotiate the terms of a possible conditional use permit, including perhaps restrictions on hours, restrictions on product. There's even been some discussion of restrictions on the amount of product sold to a particular customer in order to address and hopefully resolve any conditions that might be of concern. There is an issue under the state law as to the distance from the premises, the door to the premises, to various other businesses in the area. There's one Anchorage School District Early Intervention Services Center, which we're trying to determine exactly how far away they are, but there's a concern from a state law perspective whether a 200-foot limit does apply. There are some legal issues in that area, whether the Early Intervention Services Center for testing of rather little kids, screenings with regard to their future school activities applies. In other words, is it a school for that definition? Also, there's a state law issue as to whether the ABC Board's policy on recreational site licenses is applying any such a 200-foot limitation at present time. It has an informal policy that seems to apply that, but I'm not certain that it's still being applied. Let me finally just touch on what a recreational site license is. Under the state statute, as interpreted by the ABC memo from 2011, certain entities are allowed to operate under a recreational site license, which is a beer and wine license. It has been granted, for example, a license of that nature has been granted to one of the competitors, Beluga Billiards, which is located at the corner of Jewel Lake and Diamond above the Alaska Club. There's also a recreational site license that has been granted to Alaska Club DBA Summit Club itself on the east side. The client is concerned about the ability to compete with the other major competitors in the billiards world in Anchorage. One is indeed Beluga Billiards. The other one happens to be Billiard Palace, which has a beverage dispensary license. And hence the thought that it would be helpful in their business and helpful to serve their customers if they had a beer and wine recreational site license, which would involve principally bottled beer. So that's an overview. The clients are here to answer questions. I can try to answer questions as well, and we will proceed as you desire and as you request.
Okay, I know that Mr. Hall has to take off, but you may have some more recent information regarding this particular status of this particular conditional use.
No, I'm well briefed. I've done the tour. I've listened to the presentations. I understand what it is they're trying to accomplish. I understand the fact that the other two billiard parlors in town do have these recreational site licenses. My community council is taking a look at it. They're going to develop a resolution that my understanding is even if they end up protesting it, which I don't know that they are, they understand that they may have conditions that they would want to have put on it should the conditional use permit be issued. But I think you've heard, and I found this group is always, they're open. They appreciate people coming in and doing presentations. Some of them have been and given tours themselves. So I really have no doubt that this is one of those things that's going to get resolved in the long run. And so we've got a little more information together, and then we'll see where we go from there.
So I had one question. I'm not sure if my colleagues have any questions. I had one question, perhaps, of conditional use from the planning department. Is my understanding that the conditional use plan for this modification of this business has not been yet reviewed or approved? Is that right? Still pending?
I believe that's correct. There are representatives of the planning department.
Yes.
Here.
Yes. So for the record, we have for the planning department, Francis McLaughlin and
Erica McConnell.
Erica McConnell, sorry. And so we couldn't possibly approve, of course, until those conditions are met. We could give a conditional approval based on with that into it, but I think we're putting the cart in front of a horse. We don't traditionally do that. And so I think you've asked for a delay, or through the community council asked for a delay to meet for perhaps any written languages for the conditional use.
That would, I think, be our preference, yes, and also to afford us the opportunity to work with Mr. Bowers and with the other members of the community council on this.
Quick question, how many tables are you gonna have with this? Is this a traditional restaurant, or they just serve beer as their bowling, or what's the carrying capacity relative to this license?
I think Daryl Santino might be the
And
best
I did
man
take,
to
just for the
answer
record, I
that
took the
question.
tour, and it's pretty limited, and they can share any of the specifics, but it'd be worth your time to look at. It's physically, it's a good view to look at.
Let me answer first on and Daryl, I think, can give more detail. On the food aspect, they do not have a commercial kitchen, and they do not have a restaurant. They do have quite a bit of food sort of available via a snack bar modality, including hot and cold food, coffees, tea, and so forth. And in terms of the number of tables and how that all works, the foosball, I think it is, or no, ping pong, you can address the chair on that.
Yes, we do have about 15 tables available for everyone to use. We also have a ping pong table and a foosball table for them to use as well. That's for any paying customers that come in. So as long as you're paid, you can come in and use any of the tables that's in there. Food-wise, we do have snacks, hot foods as well, bag chips. We also have drinks, a lot of drinks that they can get, bottled water, sodas, hot coffee. We also have everything from Gatorades to also energy drinks as well. We also have combo meals as well too. Combo meals come with either fries and a drink, plus whatever food that they decide to add as a combo.
Pizza.
Do you have to pay to come to this place?
Yes.
So
So
it's not
basically,
just
we
open
have a
to
strict
public.
rule saying that if you're not paid, you can't enter the building. That's plain and simple. If they come to just watch, sorry, you have to pay again and again.
Right, Mr. Cheney, we do have some photos and such that we'd be glad to provide
Do
to
you want
you.
to pass them up so that the colleagues can, yes, Ms. Gray Jackson has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was gonna ask about photos, but you passed them out. But also, so they pay, excuse me,
Yes.
$7.50 to get into the facility.
Yes.
And then that covers any kind of,
Right, so basically, once they're in, they have the ability to play on a table. If they wanted to play ping pong, they can do that as well. Foosball, we have arcades as well.
is there a time limit?
No, it's an unlimited pay. So you have the ability to pay $7.50 to pay unlimited, but there is strict rules on there as well.
What's the hours of operation?
Right now, we're looking at 4 p.m. to 3 a.m. in the morning. In hopes that if we do get the license, we're looking to close a little earlier at 2:30 rather than at 3.
Because
So
you'll
that
have
way-
to stop.
Yeah, so we'll stop serving the beer by about 2 o'clock. It gives about 30 minutes for them to actually gather themselves up until we close.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Chief,
I don't want to cloud the waters here, and I don't know anything about this establishment I'm speaking for or against it, but I've attended some ABC board meetings recently, and I think there's some interest on the board in either redefining what a recreational license is, or reviewing whether some of those recreational licenses that are out there really fit within the regulations. And my memory isn't clear enough to tell you whether they're interested in modifying the regulations or looking at whether or not they've appropriately allowed these licenses. But there's some feeling that maybe some of these licenses are inappropriate. I mean, the feeling is that they're more designed for places like the Sullivan Arena than they are for a business that does the same thing every day. I mean, it's billiards or it's bowling alley or it's something like that. I don't know that there's going to be any change anytime soon, but I just want to let you know, I've been hearing that talk floating around in this other environment.
Yes, thank you, Chief. I'm not sure if I've heard that specific discussion, although I know that there are some issues around. Plus, as I understand it, there is apparently some discussion of a relatively broad rewriting of some of
There
the
is.
statutes and regulations.
And it's in that context that I've heard this come up. I've got my own ideas for how some of those regulations should be redone. This one wasn't on my radar screen, but I've heard other people raise it. Just want to let you know it's out there kicking around. Just to the extent you're hanging your hat on recreational license, maybe a beverage dispensary license is a more stable way to go, but that's up to you guys.
Well, they have their issues.
Yeah.
that too, clearly.
And just briefly to describe for the benefit of those in the room or my colleagues is, this is not to scale, mind you, but staying the space at this table is the rear section of the business would be open to the non-drinking. There'd be a really tight mesh net that separates the two areas, and the reason is the restrooms are at the rear of the business off to the side. And so the foosball table and the ping pong table and the vending other.
And the arcades as well.
Arcades, video games, are all open to the underage, non-drinking, can't have alcohol there at all. And only in that area where it's netted and clearly defined would be drinking. My question I had, and I'm not sure if you've still been able to research and answer, is for those persons who are waiting, because there is no time limit and they have no idea when the table will come open, for a person who wants to pay the $7.50, walk into the alcohol area as a spectator, and they're not necessarily, I mean, I guess one could call them a customer, but they're not playing billiards, they're not engaged in any other activity, but just simply watching. For all intents and purposes, you then become a bar.
Right. So we did come up with a solution in that. What we were going to do is, if they decide to pay that $7.50 to come in, they will not get one of these. They will not be able to get into the bar area until they get a table.
Right, so then that bracelet indicates
This is
you
the
are of age and can go
drinking
in.
age verified. So basically, this is what they get before entering the bar.
So they could play any other thing, video arcade,
Right.
football, or the other
They can play the
buildings in the back.
foosball, they can play the ping pong. Until they get a table, they will not be able to get this.
So
So
in
they're
the
not be able to
drink area.
enter the wet side.
Very good. That answers one of my big concerns. Okay.
I saw you got a sign that says no weapons.
Right.
What do you define as a weapon?
Anything that's concealed or anything that's hanging. You know, if you can see
Does
it,
your sign conform to state law relative to concealed carry?
not that I know.
You might want to check that.
Okay,
Because concealed carry in this state is very specific.
sure.
And simply having a sign that says no weapons doesn't meet the requirements of state code. So just, take a look at that.
Okay.
Any other comments? Anything else?
No, sir, not at this time.
Anything from the Spenard Community Council? Is there any official statement that you'd like to make?
Round two.
This is the one that Jim sent the email to you yesterday or today, so hopefully you got that. I know he's talked to Ernie. Some of the concerns that we have is past history. It was under the same ownership. There were quite a few problems with that in the past, where there was fighting, discharge of a weapon in the parking lot, spillover. Most of this was outside in the parking lot. Sam O'Connor, when he was doing West Side Patrol, did a lot of monitoring. Alan was there too. So there was eyewitness testimony from our community council members that this was going on. It took a lot to get that under control, and they haven't been selling alcohol since. I know that they have a business plan for just targeting a certain area, certain kind of people, making sure that they're paying customers and everything. But I'm still concerned. There's two aspects I'm very concerned about. One is about the 200-foot rule that they got a decision, the alcohol board did. The rule, as stated by John Novak, or at least the memorandum that was sent out on April 11th of 2011, states that one of the restrictions on it would be properties that are within 200 feet, and this is real property that is owned by, leased to, or rented to any public or private school, church, college, or university. There is an Anchorage School District property that, whether they're open or not, they have a site there, and it's within 200 feet. So it is owned by the Anchorage School District. It's not a school, but it is a school property. There's also a daycare center that, if you're going by the 200-foot rule, it's just on the other side of the building. It's within 200 feet, and yes, it's not in sight of vision, but it's there. And that's another concern that we have. There seems to be a strange interpretation by the planning department that it's door to door, But I know that when the airport sends out notifications, they do it within a radius. They don't say from the airport to someone's front door. Or when the municipality is sending out notices regarding change of property from, say, an R1 to B3, they don't say door to door. But for some odd reason, the planning department seems to find that that's the way to interpret this, even though the AG, the assistant AG, John Moback, didn't say that. And I haven't been able to find out his actual proposed language. This is incorporated within the letter that was sent to the board staff from the director of the ABC back in 2011, Shirley Gifford. So I don't know what his language was, but I certainly think that's open. I think that's a concern, that it says specifically within 200 feet of school property. This property is. So we have that, and then another concern that we have is, well, there are two more. One is just the idea of the recreational licensing. When you read what a recreational, it says in this letter also, an event-based recreational site license will allow the licensee to sell beer and wine 1 hour before and 1 hour after an event. And how a day-to-day operation can be considered an event seems strange to me. And a fear that I think I have and the council has about this, and this is something we're going to approach our legislators about, is wouldn't this make it so a lot of people can get these licenses? If you're a business going day to day, why would you go and try to get a regular beverage dispensary license or full liquor license? If you could do this is, and the whole idea is with the beverage license is that a certain part of your receipts have to be, the greater part of your receipts have to be food rather than alcohol. And if you're selling snacks, which is what they'd be selling, like potato chips and pretzels and things like that, I have a hard time believing that a cost of beer is going to be commensurate with what would be for a bag of potato chips. And I think that their proposal of limiting it to 5, somebody could just be eating pretzels and potato chips, and I don't think that's really going to help somebody who's been drinking alcohol. So that's some of the concerns our community council has with this. Past history, the idea of this particular recreational license, and the amount of sale of alcohol as opposed to food.
And Christie, do you have the numbers from the email reference Minnesota Billiards last 2 years calls for service? It should be in the same email.
Yes.
And we asked about this ahead of time so we could get at least an idea. Anecdotally, I can tell you the same concern I had. I think I voiced it with the owners when I did the site visit. As past history from my knowledge of working the streets, and the concerns were some fights and some perhaps an area of the gang activity, a younger crowd trying to turf clean, things of that nature. And there were lots of problems, and most have stemmed outside. Some of it carried inside or started inside and rolled outside. But apparently that, and I was under the belief it's new ownership, but apparently it's just new management, new change in direction. Okay. So I don't know, Chief, I know you've not been the chief back again for well, I guess a couple, 3 or 4 years now. But do you know any real instance of concern in the?
Well, I'm not hearing it upstairs in my office, but that doesn't mean that the guys and gals in the street aren't seeing an issue. So we need to crunch the data and see what's out there.
Christie, anything?
Sorry, I have to log on again.
Okay, no worries.
The portal kicked me out.
Well, I will tell you that I share the same concerns when I first reviewed the recreational site license, because I think Sullivan Arena was mentioned, Mulcahy Stadium, where they play a game on a specific night. When the Bucks and the Pilots, they have those licenses. When high school teams come and play there, there's no beer for sale. They don't have that. It's the site, it's recreational, but it's specific to the event where adults are entered, and they can sell only to adults, and it's limited to the hour before and hour after the game. At the Aces game, there's a wet side, for crying out loud. You can get beer sold to you at your seat. But at the Seawolves games, there's a beer garden. They have to get up out of their seat and go to the corner and drink it and consume it there, and then they can come back and stagger their seats or whatever they serve. But and yet when there's a youth game going on, there's no beer. So It is confusing, and we are relying heavily on ABC with their definitions and their regulations. And what we control primarily is the conditional site license, conditional use permit. And I think it's been shared that it hasn't been finalized or adopted yet. The conditional use change request, I think, is that the correct verbiage, Mr. McLaughlin? Conditional use request, change of conditional use for the site?
Minnesota Billiards has applied for a recreational site license with the state of Alaska, and they submitted an application for new conditional use permit for recreational site use and license for their location. They requested to postpone that their request in order to meet with the community council and address their concerns. I think that they plan to reschedule that process, so the assembly would hear the case after they've met with the community council and worked out a plan.
And that, to me, personally, speaks volumes that the company's we're trying to work ahead of time instead of waiting until things are ready to go, the key's ready to be turned, and then they're finally coming to the community and asking, hey, we're doing, or telling us, hey, this is what we're doing, and everything's been through the road. So I see both sides' concern. I see that there's this issue of fairness. There are already 2 recreational site licenses at billiard halls. Shamefully, I'll be the first to tell you that I haven't visited either one of those to see if what they're doing, but I already committed that I will be there to review, because there are things we can do to go back and say, wait a minute, what are the percentage of your sales, and what are you doing about making sure that the patrons aren't just walking in and treating it as a bar, looking around a little bit and then walking out. Tomorrow they come do the same thing, and the next, they're a bar at that point, and they need to have a bar license, and they need to operate as a bar if that's what they want to do. And request it. Yes, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. And I'm hearing the definition, thank you very much, of recreational use, and event is the key word. But there are 2 other facilities similar to Minnesota Billiards that have these recreational use permits.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's confusing how they got it, but I guess that's the argument here with Minnesota Billiards. If these other 2 facilities have it, then they should too. So that's one issue. And then my second concern is, you talked about 200 feet, and I would like to hear planning department's response to the distance issue. Please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'm by no means an expert in the state law, but I will read from the.
In just a moment, while she gets said, how many calls?
Yes, I see that it's a total of 7 calls, 4 of which were anything from DWI or drunken, and then 3 of those were alarm calls, so responding to the alarm.
So really no substantial.
Thank you. I'm Erica McConnell with the Planning Department. Again, I'm not an expert in the state code, but Section 04.11.410, which is the restriction of location near churches and schools, states, and I'll just read it, a beverage dispensary or package store license may not be issued, and the location of an existing license may not be transferred if the licensed premises would be located in a building, the public entrance of which is within 200 feet of a school ground or a church building in which religious services are regularly conducted, measured by the shortest pedestrian route from the outer boundaries of the school ground or the public entrance of the church building. So we interpret that A, only to apply to beverage dispensary or package store licenses, and then B, the 200 feet is not measured in the same way that we do public noticing, which is just basically a concentric circle, but by the shortest pedestrian route from the door of where the license is to the boundary of the church or school.
Mr. Trent?
Paul, could you send that to Dennis Wheeler for an interpretation from the law department relative to these type of licenses?
Sure.
Because eventually, if this goes to court, he'll be the individual representing us, and I'd like to have an answer from his office.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Nothing.
Thank you. I believe that, yes, sir.
As an officer also of the Sport Opportunity Council, could we have clarification since we try to rule on this and we try to be fair on this? Could we also, whatever you decide, what's legal and what's not legal?
Yes.
You know, so that we will know what's going on.
And I know Mr. Hall is very intimately involved in the process, and Ms. Raska recently went to the visit with myself, and I will make sure that they get the information.
You know, we're trying to make a decision
Yes.
to help or hinder or whichever. We don't even know what's legal.
So these are important questions, and that apparently we're now in that direction to try to get that answered.
And Mr. Chairman, if Municipal Attorney Weeder wants to call me on the issue, I'd be happy to speak with him or provide the input.
And we have a contact information for you, sir?
You have it there, but I'll get you a card.
Thank you.
And Mr. Trainee as well.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, last order of business now, we did publicly notice to 1:30. The VFW Post 998, the operational status update, conditional use modification request. To start, just to let you know, to be fair, I think I said at the beginning for those that were present, and thanks for your patience. The VFW, in this particular issue, was before this committee, I believe in October, I can look in the minutes. We had heard a rather lengthy presentation from both parties, and I know there were several parties here, so I want to be fair to hear. What I'm really interested in is learning if there has been any new incidents since October of 2012, and inform you really that there is a public hearing before the entire body on March 12th on perhaps conditional use changes. You've heard this danced around the issue. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? We can modify conditional use at the municipality level. There's a certain amount of steps in the public process we have to provide, and it cannot be arbitrary and capricious. It can't just be because somebody said so. It has to have some meanings behind it, some validation that we can lean back on and defend publicly if we need be. So if you just identify yourselves real quick, like, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, Steve Albert, Commander, VFW Post 991.
Steve Gersley, Old Seward, Ocean View Community Council Press.
Donald Kessler, one of the residents of Back Road neighborhood.
Nancy Wainwright, Secretary of the Old Seward Ocean Community Council. Catherine Kessler, neighbor of the Back Road.
Very good. So since our last meeting before this committee, my understanding is there was at least one incident from November. I had received a police report alleging loud noise, and I read through the report. I think you guys all thought I saw a copy of that with the application and the ordinance that Ms. Johnson had introduced. I may have a copy of it here. Is there anything new that you would like to present? And I don't care who starts here, but if someone new can start, any information that we have not had previously.
November 2012, we have resolution number 3 in regards to this.
Thank you.
And I believe I sent that on to all assembly members. If you need copies of number 1 and 2, which were September 12th, we have those available.
Okay. So in synopsis, this resolution is calling for
200 feet.
new liquid license and no new
That's
license
a lot of paragraph.
200 feet of any private residence of the Old Seward community.
Correct. And it passed, I think we had a forum that night. I think we had like 20 people there. I don't have the exact number, but it passed. As well as the other resolutions, number 1 and number 2 passed. One, we had like 50 members come before us in the September meeting, and resolution number 2 passed. The other thing that I do have, if you don't have a copy of it, I did request from DHHS Environmental Health a public information request, and I received that February from 1/20. I got that January 28th, 13. This is the response of the entire documents that DHHS has on the noise, either noise abatement or noise investigations done through their services. And so if you want a copy of this.
Anything since October meeting that we had?
I didn't fine tune read it, but I think there was 21 complaints, and I don't think they were all from October on. I think it was prior to that. This is all the data that was given to us from DHHS.
And you have that available to the,
Oh,
Ms.
well,
Johnston?
we would be able to vote for
Yep.
you as well. I don't believe there were any other testings of noise between the last time we met with the public, in the big public safety meeting through now.
I think that might be correct.
Okay, very good. Mr. Kessler?
I'd like to contest that. Actually, at the past Public Safety Committee meeting, Genevieve Meyer,
Yes, sir.
yeah. I believe you were the first one to testify for DHHS, and you said, and that meeting, I believe, was on September 12th. And Janine Nashheim had gone out on September 7th, Friday and Saturday night, and testified. I think you first said that she'd gone out 2 nights while a band was playing and had done testing. Janine Nashheim then joined you at the lectern and said that yes, she had done the testing between the hours of 10:30 and 1 a.m. and they were not in violation. Both me and Nancy Wainwright here then requested a public information, and upon receiving that hours of 10:30 to 1 actually consisted of 17 minutes of reading on Friday night when there was a band, and 1 minute on Saturday night when there was no band. What's especially disturbing about it was the location where she took her readings. When asked by, I believe it was either Mr. Holman or Trainee, she said, yes, I was in the area of the neighborhood. On two occasions, she came to the neighborhood and spoke with neighbors and us specifically, and stated, as per code, the proper location to take these testings, these readings, were on the property line directly between their back door and our residence. That is 23 feet from their back door. Where she took her readings was 100 feet away down the driveway, and her feet were a full 17 feet below the floor of the bar, behind an earthen retaining wall and a whole line of trees. I have the pictures here to show you if you want to see them. But once I pointed this out to Janine Nashheim and Tony Barrett and pushed the issue that this was terribly flawed, it was, what was the date? Here's all their testing, but they came back out then.
November 6th.
I'm sorry?
November 6th.
Okay, November 6th then.
Yes, we did come back out,
They
excuse me.
came back out and they did more testing. I suggested, in order to make a comparison, and let me just quote something here real quickly so you can, noise control.
I'm really interested in the readings. What were the readings from November 6th? that you
Okay,
have
the
there?
readings that she took, as she testified to the previous meeting.
No, I'm talking about the November.
I know.
I'm talking
And
November.
It's all relative.
Well, I hear your concern, your voice your displeasure, the location they were at, you didn't think it was appropriate. Their response was they took it as per the code. You're disputing that. I get that. Let's move beyond that now. Let's talk about what are the readings in November.
You need to put the two together, but
I
we take
get-
62
I get it.
decibels.
Okay, I get it.
62 decibels. When the readings were taken and you did the comparison, it came up at 62 decibels at the property line, which is 7 decibels over code. Code reads 55 decibels at the property line, which is a blended rate between the 60 at I-1 and 50 at residential. The second code that was violated was it raised the ambient level within our home by 7 decibels. Code says it can't raise it by more than 3 decibels. And these are all the readings from all those testing. So we have that. Now then, also at the Public Safety Committee meeting, you, Mr. Honeman, were talking to Mr. Denny after we had all spoken somewhat, and you referred to Chief Neal, and you asked Mr. Denny to try and be a good neighbor, try and keep the noise down, at a reasonable time, 10 or 11. Officer Elby's report on November 17th, which he wasn't going to write a report until I talked to him the next morning and convinced him that he should write a report, because it does two things. It proves that, again, even though you talked to him at the Public Safety Committee, asking him to control the noise, it also shows that they're open when he got there at 2:38 a.m. And there were still 10 people sitting around the bar drinking and listening to loud music. Their conditional use permit states they shall not be open past 2 a.m. I've got many pieces of evidence here to show that they have been open since 3 a.m. forever.
Okay.
Now that just addresses the DHHS. Let me see here just a second, very quickly. Also, DHHS has it within their capability to set up remote monitoring equipment. That means they can set this equipment up and come back once a day and download that information. So nobody has to be present. It's just they're downloading data. Officer Gilliam of the Cat Patrol in June came to DHHS and asked them to set up this equipment for a period of 2 weeks, specifically targeting the 4th of July. They said they would do that. It never happened. Also, there was a meeting with Dietra Ennis, municipal attorney, in which DHHS said they were going to go ahead and set up the monitoring equipment for 3 to 5 days. This did not happen. Prior to them taking the readings that they testified to at the past public safety meeting, I sent an email to you, Mr. Honeman, Tony Barrett, Janine Nashheim from DHHS, Ernie Hall, Jennifer Johnson, and Chris Birch, stating that since the meeting with Dietra Ennis, the municipal attorney, the VFW has gotten quiet, so it's useless to take any readings. So after 2 years of waiting to get readings, they finally did it the very next weekend, 3 days before the Public Safety Committee meeting. This feels very wrong. And even when they were being quiet, that reading the night she took in the bad location was 52, compounded with the corrective measurements, put it at 62, after you asked him to be quiet. So I do have a problem with the noise. We all do. Our whole neighborhood does have an issue.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll see some.
On that issue, I'm finished on that. I still have a lot to add with planning and zoning, which I'm sure Erica McConnell and Francis.
Are we talking
McLaughlin-
since November, or since October, I'm sorry?
Correct, since that past safety meeting.
Go ahead, if you, I mean, I'd be happy, I'm Nancy Wainwright, I'm Secretary of the Community Council, former Vice President, also a back road neighbor. I would like to defer to Mr. Kessler on all the facts because he knows them. Also, to let you know, the neighbors have designated the Kesslers to be the spokesperson and also to call the police when there's noise violations. We understand, we've heard, and we don't know if this is true, and I'd like maybe the police chief to answer this, that when they get calls from Kesslers, they don't even report them anymore, but we have specifically asked that they're the first ones who hear it. We all hear it, but they're the first ones. You know, a lot of people have babies in the neighborhood. They don't want to be up reporting to the police, waiting for them to answer. It's, you know, it's a little bit of a disturbance at 1 a.m. to have to keep calling the police. So we would like the, you know, all the calls that come from Kesslers, we want to be recorded because they're not just Kesslers. They hear it first. The other thing is, you know, I want to defer to him on all the facts and all the remaining things because he has gathered them. But the laws that have been violated since October, due process,
Mr. Traney raised arbitrary and capricious, that is based on the Fifth Amendment, due process, equal protection. Other bars, and even in our neighborhood, have received very differential treatment. For example, the Taproot Cafe, they had a parking issue, they had to relocate. So, the municipality felt like parking cars are more important than 2 years of a neighborhood being disturbed. The conditional use permit says no disturbance to the neighborhood. It happens every night. So every night since October, with the exception of a few, there have been a violation of the conditional use permit, arbitrary enforcement of the laws, due process violations, and a taking of public property, of personal property, private property, without compensation. We've had a diminishment in value of our property. People are leaving, and we have a realtor who unfortunately isn't here today to testify, but we'll give you the name, Mr. Kessler has it, who documented the decline in property values in our neighborhood. This affects all of us. So there have been a number of violations since October, and Mr. Kessler, I defer to the rest of you.
Okay, hang on just a second. I'm looking at the time, and we're noticed and posted till 1:30. And if we've heard plenty here so far, and I'm interested in hearing more, but I need to get, if we could get the VFW here so we can on record. And if we have to leave at the end of this conclusion, remembering that there's a public hearing notice for March 12th. Sir?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting that we have a prime example here in relationship to now Don Kessler is personally attacking the departments that basically have jurisdiction and control and are hired by the municipality to monitor the noise level. And we have been under attack for 2 years. Originally tried to work with Don, insulated the back walls. He came over and actually put some insulation, soundproofing on the back doors.
Is this since October you're talking about?
We need to talk about anything that's been happening since the last time.
No, just basically, one of the things on the noise complaint that in the resolution in particular that Steve had talked about, I was a little concerned with that because the Kesslers actually had brought several people to that Ocean View Community Council meeting. They paid their $5 and pushed that resolution through without actually even consulting with VFW so we could have equal representation at that council meeting. I just, here I am sitting here at a meeting where I'm just given this information. Wayne Anthony Ross, I tried to get a hold of Wayne on short notice. He's not able to make it for our legal representation in relationship to getting the support that we need. But I think we're kind of beating this horse to death in relationship to the noise complaints, everything that he's got listed on there.
I need to ask you, I want to be relevant, respectful. I want to be relevant to since the last meeting. They're absolutely correct. I admonished Mr. Denny I admonished the back road neighbors at the same time to be, no matter what we wish, if we had the wand for the day, we have no authority to immediately shut down their business completely because you're on your say-so. It has to go through the process, and we certainly have to hear the evidence and clearly go through the steps it takes to attempt to mitigate, and then finally, if it comes to a point where we're not. I'm concerned about, after the admonishment and the request, that there's a 2 o'clock call or 2:30 in the morning call in November by the police, and then they're obviously stating that the business still had customers and the music was still up.
Yeah, and we dealt with the planning department on that, and that actually, when we structured that permit up, I'm the one that wrote the hours down as far as the hours. But the first time ever doing this, I was under the understanding that the normal bar hours within the municipality of Anchorage was, I believe, last call at 2:30, and everyone out at 3 o'clock. When I took those hours down, by the way, we're in full compliance since we talked to the planning department, got everything straightened out. But I'll take full responsibility for that particular issue as it occurred and we were given notice of it. But I had thought because of the standard hours that most bars are open until 3 o'clock.
Well, I want to point out very clearly, you're not a bar, you're a club. So, Mr. Trainee had a question.
Do you attend the community council meetings on a regular basis?
I do not on a regular basis.
Have you ever
Whenever
attended?
anything, we're given information that we're on the agenda to be. Originally, if we had structured this so that we would become more active with Ocean View Community Council. I actually did a presentation over there in relationship that we were there to support the community, not be detrimental. I'm the executive officer of 2 scout packs that basically came in and cleaned the area up. So I mean, I'm going before October, but I mean, as far as your answer goes, I do not on a regular basis, mainly because there was a big upheaval in relationship to a lot of the things that transpired at the Ocean View Community Council.
I would suggest you start attending it. And if you go to business, most bylaws tick their bylaws. Most bylaws allow business to participate as a member of the community council. So what I would do is start attending every one of them, because this could have been maybe forestalled had the community council had the benefit of what you're trying to do and what they want and what gets to us.
We're nearly at the time. Can you synopsize or summarize since, briefly, follow up. Have you taken steps to correct problems since the 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m.?
That's been resolved, and we're in full compliance.
Have you been noticed a violation by the ABC board on that?
No.
Can I say one thing? I don't know what steps, he hasn't said what steps, but I will tell you that I spoke with a sound person and actually a former person who used to play at the bar, and they said that sound waves have like a focal point, like a camera does, and the sound waves for bass aren't in the bar. They're actually outside the bar, depending on the decibel level. And unfortunately, the sweet spot, the focal point of that bass happens to be about 26 to 30 feet, which is in their living room and in close proximity to other neighbors. So whatever measures they're taking aren't working, and we need scientific measurements. They need to totally insulate the building, insulate the houses, do something to prevent the violations, the sound violations. I've heard nothing that they've done since September to insulate or change scientifically the fact that this sound is traveling.
Or reduce the hours so that this noise isn't emitting from past a certain time. Okay, well, we're gonna need to adjourn this meeting in particular. I admonish both sides to be at the public hearing on March 12th. It sounds as if, and I'm not satisfied that, I understand your frustration, sir, and I am satisfied that there are steps being taken from the departments to do their part. I'm going to urge backroad neighbors to not leave one person in particular, or one party in particular, the reporting party. And here's the reason. One person becomes a he said, she said bias. If you've got more than one party impacted, multiple reporting parties carry a bit more, if you will, less, it diminishes or lessens the bias. I'm just telling you, if you ask any attorney, I'm sure they'd hear the same thing.
I think we have the entire community council speaking on this.
I hear you.
It's not just,
I hear you.
and I think, so I don't think that telling us, we don't want to have to get up at 1 a.m. We don't, none of us do. And the Kesslers hear it first, and so they're willing to do it. I appreciate that you want
They
us
certainly
to
can
do
call.
it.
I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm saying that if you're hearing it out at your residence, then you should report as well.
We will submit affidavits to you then.
Well, I'm saying going forward. I'm not saying what you have.
Okay,
You certainly
we'll
want to do what you
submit
need.
affidavits going forward.
I'm going to admonish again, sir. You got to follow the conditional use and all the laws and the rules that are out in play, including the quiet hour. And there's a noise issue that we've got to work with, and I think that's where we're headed. There are modifications to the conditional use. I haven't seen them yet, but it says here on the resolution, providing licensing and opportunity to meet with the Assembly Public Committee, and further providing for the public hearing on the Assembly for exercise or waiver of its protest. And the protest is essentially generated around these police calls and the noise. So you're literally, we've been talking about issues with other organizations here, not just yours. To be fair, a recreational site license, a package store, and now a club, not a bar. And that we're in a position, we must take action based on information and evidence that we receive. You need to make sure that you're doing your part. And please be there on the 13th of March with hopefully your accident.
Quick comment,
Yes.
just to confirm, this VFW, is that Mr. Brochus and Ms. Johnson?
That's correct.
Yeah, and I'm gonna make a comment. I think it's really, really sad that your two representatives are not at this meeting, and I don't know if there were any others. because we have districts that we represent, that everybody knows, and, you know, reality is we represent the entire community.
Absolutely.
But I'm disappointed that your two representatives didn't find it
We are.
important to be here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Could I say one more thing then?
And yes, as we saw.
Okay. At this meeting now, obviously, we're out of time. We addressed one issue, one department. I have evidence here, and you have representatives from planning, and you have representatives from the police. There are other issues that we have not gotten to, and hopefully we'll be able to address those on March 12th.
We can certainly do that. I'd be more than willing to facilitate a special meeting if we need to. I'm not sure if these members of this committee will, but I will tell you up front that if that is the case, then I would expect one or both of your representatives to be here as well. I'll invite them. I certainly encourage you to invite them as well. Because this is, we take up these issues and we certainly make recommendations, but it's the entire body that votes on them. So just so you know. I'm more than glad to reschedule. Is there anything that, planning department, I think to be fair, is there anything that you needed to state on this? I know you weren't called upon it. It was not addressed at this point. Is there anything that you've sat through this patiently? Anything? Please. We have to close.
Thank you. Just quickly, one of Mr. Kessler's issues, and just to be clear, Mr. Kessler, I have spoken with him at his request. I have not spoken with any representatives of the VFW. But one issue that he will raise is a discrepancy in the conditional use permit about the area that is permitted for
We were contacted
service.
about that, and that was testified to in September.
And I'd just like to state that I believe that was a clerical error in reviewing the original conditional use application by a member of the staff.
And that was my understanding too, and I believe, I think that was discussed at the meeting in September, so that is not new. I thought it was because
It was
Mr.
not discussed in September.
No.
Okay. Then I'm mistaken, and I apologize. But I do know that was discussed, and perhaps it was subsequent to that. I know I had a conversation with Mr. McLaughlin, and he was willing to state that and stipulate that it was the municipal error. I had believed that was made clear to the Kesslers and the backroom neighbors. Also, I know that I had conversations with the city about it. I'm sorry I missed the point. So,
And
anyway,
it
at
ought
this
to be
point,
fixed.
this hearing is closed, this committee meeting is closed, and adjourn at officially 1:37 p.m. And we are